What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Agency U podcast with myself and Gilberto. We're pumped for today because what we're doing is we're going to do a little rapid fire. We're going to do 21 questions that agency owners ask a lot, 21 questions that come up quite a bit when we are talking to agency owners because that is what we do all day. So the purpose of this podcast is to really just rapid fire a lot of questions, get our take on a lot of questions that you probably are thinking and either don't ask or don't want to watch a 30-minute YouTube video on, and we're just going to jam through it. So really the categories of questions that we're going to go through is things around sales, things around indecision and commitment, and like making decisions as a business owner, because that's what you guys are. Mindset from the perspective of using resources financially as you start to grow and start to make some money, niching down, and then working in the business versus working on the business. So let's get into it. Gilberto, how's it going, man?
Doing good, man. I'm pumped. Yeah, these are quite a few of the questions that come up. Just even like on calls that we have with agency owners, especially like sales, like niche related. There's systems, basically like helping people like switch from freelancer to CEO. A lot of like the same questions coming up.
Yeah, love it. Cool. Well, we're each going to spend like maybe 30 seconds to a minute answering them. So I'll kick it off in the sales world because that's definitely where Gilberto thrives. So Gilberto, how do you not be salesy as an agency owner?
Yeah, I think the main thing with like the whole like not be like salesy is like really like kind of a perception thing. Is the main thing. And I usually hear this from like agency owners that are like around, let's say like 0 to 10K a month that like mostly go off of referrals and word of mouth. Like mostly it stems from like a lack of sales process. Like when you have a solid sales process and a actual like proven one that works, like it shouldn't sound salesy. Like it should honestly just be like a conversation that you're having with like another individual to see if there's a problem and like how you can help them and presenting that solution to them and helping them like through that decision making. If you do that, like it should not sound salesy at all. I think it's mostly like something that's come about from like movies and like Hollywood. Like people have like certain perceptions of what like sales look
ABC.
like from from like movies that they've seen, but that's not what actual like real sales looks like.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would say like, especially on a sales call, if you have done the work, the foundational work to have a really good offer that solves a pain point for a specific niche, and you feel like you can solve those problems, then like what you said, it should organically come about. Like the sales conversation, it's not like you're trying to close them on the spot. You're simply just looking for a pain point of the prospect that you can then come in and solve with your service offering. So if your agency is positioned as a problem solver and not just like a service provider, like salesperson, then you should be positioned pretty well to not be salesy and then just simply solve a problem. Because at the end of the day, if you're actually providing service to them and you do come off as salesy and you close somebody using the turn back close, whatever you want to call it, and then you start doing business with them, it's just not going to be fun for you anyway, and they're not going to be an ideal client. So I think it starts with the foundation. I think it's what you said, mindset and like
Process.
process and
Yeah.
ego too, to be honest.
Yeah.
um cool. What else could we ask? Can you give an example of a sales tactic that feels genuine and effective for agency owners?
I don't know if it would be a tactic, but it's more like an approach on the calls. Like if you go into the conversation like out of a place of general like genuine curiosity and empathy for the person, like it's almost kind of like removing yourself out of the equation and like just for that 45-minute block, like really just putting yourself in their shoes as much as possible. Naturally, all the stuff around like being like salesy or any sort of things like just wash away because you're not really thinking about yourself and like how you're coming across and like how you're perceived. You're more like the call is all about them, and then just naturally like your tonality, the questions that you ask are all naturally just going to come off super authentic, and the person is going to feel like they're going to feel that if you come from that approach. Like genuine curiosity and empathy can never go wrong with that. That's how you can ensure like that you have an authentic conversation with them.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. From a sales tactic perspective, one thing that I saw Gary Vee post years ago when I was doing sales at King 5, doing advertising sales for businesses, was the best marketing strategy is to care. And I think that's what
Yeah.
goes into being a salesperson. Like the more you actually genuinely care and you actually care to solve the problem of the business that you're actually talking to, and you feel convicted that you can actually solve that problem, then that is going to be a genuine and effective sales process versus like if you're just bullying them with a bunch of questions and like trying to get them to close using the ABC framework. It's like not going to work. Just be curious and genuine and interested in solving their problems, and that will take you a long way.
100%.
Um, let's do. How do you?
Actually, I just on that note, I was just looking it up on my Audible, like one book recommendation to just kind of wrap up the recent question. Heart and Sell by Sherry Levitin, like really good book. It's like sales book, and it's like all around like the topic that we just covered right now, like about like empathy and like all of this stuff here, like how not to come across salesy. So for those
Nice.
of you guys listening, like Heart and Sell, if you guys like have any sort of like resistance towards selling or anything where you guys just want to increase your sales skills, Heart and Sell by Sherry Levitin, like really good book.
Love it. So
Yeah.
on the topic of salesy, if I'm a agency owner and I'm doing like let's call it like the 0 to 10K or whatever, I'm just getting going, or maybe I've had some successes in my business. How do I not be salesy when I'm trying to get new clients? Maybe I've been working off of word of mouth and referral. It's been going really well, but I need new clients. How do I not be salesy in that approach?
Yeah. So basically, you want to, when others zig, you want to zag. In like, what's the most like typical thing, like traditional like sales of like, if you can think of like car salesmen like back in the 80s, like it's just pretty much like all just kind of like pitch. It's like trying to like cram it down their throat, like hard selling, like just vomiting your value proposition and presentation. Instead, like a very basic approach would be like thinking of yourself as like the consultant. When you go to a doctor, like they're never seen as salesy, right? Like I've never heard anyone ever say like, yeah, this person was super sales, this doctor was super salesy, even though it is a sales process to get someone who's like sick and needs this treatment to like take this treatment and
That's
like
good.
buy this treatment, right? It is a sales process. If you go to a financial advisor and you want to work with, they have a sales process. You go to a CPA, they have a sales process, at least the really successful ones, right? And so if you can really see yourself more as like a consultant, right, that first wants to identify problems to see if there is even a problem that you can solve and then offer the solution in the right way, like as just a high level overview, that would be like the starting point. Viewing yourself as like a consultant, an advisor, almost like a doctor who's seeing a sick patient, that would be the good frame to come through. Like it'll be very hard for you to like come across salesy, because if you come from that frame of like being a consultant or like even a doctor, you're going to naturally be like empathetic and curious.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that there's also like always a roadblock to reaching out to people, to DMing people, because you feel like you get in your
Yeah.
head quite a bit. And then I mean, I recently heard, I mean, Hormozy on his course on $100 million leads revealed that like 50% of Jim Launch's business came from outbound. And it's like you see all of his content, you see all of his ads, and you're like, dang, that looks so cool. Like he's probably like crushing it with that. But it's like, no, 50% of his business came from outbound, from reaching out to people, from getting over the thing of being salesy, leading with value, like what you said, like leading, like not being just trying to close the deal right away, but leading with some sort of value. And that literally grew his business to $100 million exit. Like that's
Yeah.
unreal to me. And that's stuff that we don't see. So it's like, I think the misnomer, especially in the agency world, is like, oh, I'm just going to create content and clients are going to like come to me. But
Yeah.
it's like, no, you need to put the work in and like go through the reps. And if you become salesy on a couple messages, like no big deal. But your job literally is to help solve problems, and the only way you're going to find more people to solve the problem is to get in front of them.
Absolutely. Like even to add on to that point, like with Alex Hermosi, it wasn't just from like outbound. So it wasn't outbound DMs that he got it from. It was like cold calls. And I know this because I know someone who is an SDR
Nice.
at his company, right? And so they actually have an entire like just you can almost like virtual call center of SDRs who go in there and like cold call gym owners to get them on a call with a salesperson. Well, I mean, they have a process around it, but it is really like cold calling, right? Like,
Yeah.
and for most agency owners, like they don't need to be doing cold calls. I mean, just simply doing like the outbound DMs will be enough.
Yeah.
And I think it's mostly around like that mental hurdle of just like possibly like the fear of judgment would be like the biggest thing.
Totally.
That's what I think stops a lot of them because like one of the things that I was talking to like even an agency U member, it's like it's very hard for you yourself to do outbound if you judge others that do it as well. And so once you release that judgment, it's like you can now go in there and not have to like fear like if someone says like something negative or whatever. Because at the end of the day, like that's going to last like for a fleeting moment of a couple seconds that person is going to like have a judgment, and you're basing your entire like potential revenue of getting to like 0 to 10K a month off of that one person's opinion or maybe two people that are bad apples. And so if you can just
Totally.
push that aside and be okay with that and expect it, that it'll happen, then now you're free to like really just take control of your agency's revenue.
Love it. Um, what other questions we got here? How has your attitude towards sales evolved since you started your agency?
Yeah, I view it a lot differently. I also had a very like skewed perception of sales when I first started, like in 2018. Like I was doing cold calls. Like that's how I would get my calls like booked in. Is I would call up real estate agents or mortgage brokers and get them in, and I would do like all the like typical like sales stuff of what I thought sales would look like. And it wasn't until like I paid a mentor to show me like an actual process that I can follow and get behind that actually works and gets results. Like that's when things shifted. And like one of the big shifts was like seeing sales as like a service rather than like something that's like unpleasant or like you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do. Because people would if people like had the ability to just like do the decision on their own of like joining a program or whatever or like signing up for a service, sales would not exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would not exist at all. Yet it's like one of the highest paid positions, even more than doctors sometimes. Why is that? Because you're doing like it really is a surface. You're getting people over their limiting beliefs, like preconceptions and things that are holding you back. You're essentially helping someone make a decision. And quite frankly, you're having a conversation with people that they honestly probably most of the time haven't had with anyone in their sphere of influence or anyone else, right? It goes pretty deep.
Yeah.
So it really is like a service. And that's like one of the biggest things, like for me, of how I view sales is now I viewed it in that way. Like sales is a service, like we're helping people like get past their stuff. And, one decision made on that sales call can change the entire trajectory of their entire life. I know for me, like if I hadn't signed up for a select few programs, I would not have ever scaled my agency to seven figures
Totally.
ever. Just the act of them signing up on the call is a sign of commitment and like almost telling themselves internally that they trust themselves, that they're willing to commit. And that's a powerful thing. If you have the ability to be able to move people in that way, it's powerful if used for good.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say for me, my perception of sales when I first started to where I am today was like one, the power of process, because we grew like word of mouth referrals, like super easy layup sales, like cool, you want to work with us, perfect, like here's what we do, okay, bet, okay, awesome, like done deal. I would say the importance of having a process, because when there's going to be a day and time where you're not going to get a bunch of word of mouth and referrals, and you need a good process to take them through from when they initially book a call to like the reminders to the sales process on a call to the follow-up protocols and all of that stuff. So that's the number one. And the second thing I would say is the volume required to actually make a sale.
Yeah.
Like we think, especially when you're coming from doing a lot of word of mouth and referrals and like building a network and having a brand, once you start doing sales, we might think, okay, if I just message like 100 people, like I'm going to get like at least 10 deals from that. It's like, absolutely not. Especially cold people. It's like they have no idea who you are. They don't trust you. It's like, it's going to take a 10x amount to like book a call. And then after you book a call, then you actually need to like earn their trust and actually convert them with what you can actually offer them. And I
100%.
was surprised about how much like emails and like DMs and like we were doing everything. I'm an extremist. So like I did absolutely everything. And the volume required to actually get a piece of business from cold to sold is a lot higher than probably what you think.
It's yeah, that when I was doing my outbound, like let's say in the situation of where I was like getting my first 10K month years ago, I was surprised. Like I remember a mentor told me like, all right, man, you need to be doing 15 times the amount of things that you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Like I was not sending enough messages. And it was like because I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Like I thought I knew of like how much was required. And then that simple thing, like he just told me, like, hey man, you need to be doing 15 times. Like if your sales call doesn't show up, like start like it doesn't matter. Like you start calling again and you start DMing. And so that's really what it takes. Like in the beginning, if you have no network, like you don't know anyone, which is where I was, like I knew no one that had like
Totally.
any sort of like net worth at all or has a business. So I started from zero. And so that was 15 times. It really like expanded my like just thought bigger of like what's required. And
Yep.
so if you listening here and you're kind of in that spot, like I would challenge you to kind of just think bigger of like, hey, how can I 10x this? So like kind of like Grant Cardone also kind of thing.
That's what I was
How
thinking
can I
too.
10x,
10x.
15x this? What would that look like? And then
Yeah.
start doing that. Even if you don't hit it, like just the pure thought of like trying to hit that number, you're automatically going to do like 5 times more than not thinking that way. So
For sure.
that's a huge game changer in just like a mental shift of like understanding what's really, really required because it's a lot. I mean, we send out thousands and thousands of emails, both across myself and Austin's agency, like thousands of emails to get like, several
Millions.
clients, right?
Probably millions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've sent
Legit.
over, tens of millions in the last 6 years for sure over emails,
100%.
text, dials. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it's up there.
Cool. Let's talk about some mindset stuff. So, first thing that I want to talk about is like the money mindset. So, how do you like what is your mindset as an agency owner around like finances and resources and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the important thing is like being intentional, and then working on basically being more conscious of like how you view money because that's a huge like thing and like just in business in general because everyone has like certain things that they've learned from their parents of like what money is, how they view it, how it should be spent, how it should be saved, how it should be invested. All of those things dictate how you treat cash flow, and if it's not treated with intentionality, with with a deep like self-awareness as well, it just runs in the background unconsciously, and it allows some people to actually just purely if you did everything right and didn't know how to manage resources and cash flow, then you would never grow your agency because at least what I found is like it's really like a process of like finding how you view things around money, seeing exactly what that is, and then like switching the things that are not conducive to like growing an agency. Because I know plenty of guys over the last 6 years who weren't able to like grow their agency because like they did like x amount, but they actually also spent that amount and weren't able to
Mm-hmm.
keep anything. And then the ones that actually kept it weren't able to like invest it, right? And so from very early on, I was very conscious on like how I view things around spending and like saving, and then like also investing as well. And so I set those systems up early. And it's a constant process. Like it never ever ends. Like the game of personal development, there's never going to be someone who has like perfect around money. It just does not exist. So I would say one of the like key books that helped me. I actually went to a conference on this, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Super, like literally, actually one of the few books that have literally like changed my life. I'd say one of the top 5, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. They used to, I don't know if they still have it now. They have like free events. It's literally like a free event.
Nice.
And it's or $97 a month. I mean, $97 for the event. And it's literally all around like doing like money work, like finding like all of these things, your limiting beliefs, like how you view money, like all this stuff, like super powerful stuff. Can't believe it was free. I don't think I actually paid anything with that one. But yeah, super important. So if you guys are listening, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, T. Harv Eker,
So, yeah,
amazing
I
book.
think I think what I like when I think about like as we produce income as an agency, I look at that income as not going into my pocket, but a tool of how I can produce more with what I'm gaining. Like, so let's just say I get a $2,000 deal. Okay, so what I want to do, because I don't want to spend $2,000 worth of my time into like managing the client, is I think, okay, where can I spend $2,000 to help fulfill this job and make my life easier? So I like what I've learned from like growing our agency was like any piece of income that comes in is simply a tool. And where we invested a lot of our resources were into people. So any piece of income, I was like, okay, great. How do I buy back an extra 5 hours so that I don't have to do this? How do I buy back an extra 5 hours for Mark, who's on our team, so he doesn't have to do this? And then it kind of trickles down, and that frees up capacity to handle more clients. So I 100% took the emotions out of any finances and totally looked at it as a tool of how I could use that money to expand it, whether that's buying a studio, getting the studio, getting stuff for the studio, which would then have a long-term benefit. So I look at it, okay, how do I sure make some money for me, but invest into the business, whether that's education, whether that's studio, whether that's people, so that long term we can actually continue to grow if that is the intention of the agency. So it's taking the emotions out of it and then just looking at it as like a tool. And then of course like paying yourself, like figure out how much you want to make and then making that a part of it, and then being smart with like a P&L and like a forecast and stuff like that.
Super huge, especially the forecast one too.
Massive.
Yeah. And then like there's this book called also Profit First, which is
Yeah,
also important.
it's a great
It's
freelancer
basically
book.
like all around kind of the concept of like if you're like what's that oxygen mask, like when it falls in, like they always tell you like put yours on first so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can give
yeah.
it to someone else. It's kind of like you can't
Totally.
fill if you can't fill someone else's cup if your cup isn't full. So that's kind of like the example that I gave of like people that I know where it's like they took like zero profits and then like it's not a good situation. So you always want to
Yeah,
have like systems in place to make sure structure, I think, is the main thing to take away. Structure to handle
for sure.
finances.
Yeah. I mean, you can literally predict the future of your agency just by having a financial plan and having a forecast. And then you can
100%.
literally showcase how much you're going to make by having a financial forecast. Like, I think that's something that is so mind blowing when I present it to a lot of agencies because they're like, oh my gosh, I would never even think about that. But it's like, yeah, just like you budget, like if you had a job, it's the same thing for the agency. And then you can just reverse engineer how much you want to make, how much profit, et cetera. And then that is the income goal or the sales goal. Let's talk about niching down. So a lot of people fear niching down in their business. Why is it important to niche down as an agency owner?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people view it as like, hey, I don't want to like lose out on business. Like I'm losing money. Like I'm leaving money on the table. But really, it's like you're not. What's actually happening is you're doubling down and focusing on like one niche, one offer, and like one process of like getting clients. And through that, you're actually like over just even the span of 3 months, you're actually going to get a lot farther than like working with everyone and doing like custom work and all that kind of stuff. Because what's going to happen is if you do custom work, each one of those are a different process. Like you need a different system in place for like doing video for med spas, versus like doing ads for car dealers and like offering all of these like services. Yes, there are like big agencies that do that, and have that, but they didn't start that way. I guarantee you, because when I worked at an agency that was at that level, they didn't start that way. And so you don't want to look at someone and like, oh, well, they're doing it that way. They didn't start that way. You want to start with like one niche, one offer, and one process of getting these clients. And you're going to propel so much farther in 6 months to a year as compared to like being spread out too thin and like doing everything for everyone. And you're also going to be a lot way more stressed out.
You froze up for a second, but I think I follow the last 2 seconds of what you said. Yeah, I mean, as far as like niching down goes, like I remember when we were first starting, kind of transitioning from just myself, like I would say yes to everything because it was the fear of missing out. I didn't want to miss out on revenue. I didn't want to make this client upset. I didn't want to potentially lose the client to another competitor, whatever that would be. And was really just like an order taker. I was like, yeah, you need video for sure. Yeah, you need a website. Yeah, I can do that. But what I was selling was just like myself and my services and what I could do. And I became the bottleneck of everything, and I became overwhelmed as a result because, like what you said, it's not humanly possible to create a system and process for every single niche for everything that you're saying yes to. So what we did was like we were like, okay, cool, we're gonna just offer these packages for this avatar, and that's all we're going to do, and not be order takers anymore. And it's hard, and like clients sometimes don't agree with it necessarily, or maybe they might be hesitant if there was a past relationship of you being an order taker for them. But that's what allowed us to go from myself and Mark to 25 people at our agency, was by having systems and processes that were clear cut and dry for one particular 1 to 3 different offers that we could do for that specific niche. And if it's something custom, yeah, they'll pay for it, but it needs to be within the guardrails and with the expectation that, hey, eventually you'll become a retainer client into this offer. So that's our story of doing it. And I mean, if I'm ever like, I can't imagine like not having a niche. And I think it's also the same story. It's like if you're gonna get back surgery, like would you go to the back surgeon who does back surgery? They do leg surgery. They do pediatric nursing, whatever it could be, or would you go to the doctor who just does back surgery and they do it 1,000 times and they do 1,000 back surgeries a year? Probably the latter, and you'd probably pay more for it. So it makes you more valuable as an agency, and then you can continue to learn more about the business and add more value to them, which makes your retention and your value to clients and your pricing go up significantly as a result. Okay, on the niche point, how do you discover what niche to actually choose?
That's a hard one because there's not like one set thing where it's like, hey, this niche works for you if you do this, or like, it's not very like clean cut because there's like several factors of picking a niche. Like number one, like you want to have a niche where like they're willing to pay the price, like a high ticket price. You don't want to be like offering, high end video production to coffee shops that
Coffee
are
stands.
like only have a budget of like $300 to $500 a month, right? Like that's not
Yeah.
going to be a good niche, right? So you have to pick a niche where you see that there's a lot of money flowing there and they have the budgets for the price point that you want to charge, right? Like kind of thinking with the end in mind. And then the second part is like evaluating like where do your strengths lie, and what do you already know. So if like you've transitioned from a job or you already have like a certain skill set or expertise or industry knowledge, that is a huge competitor advantage in just going into a niche. Like it's going to accelerate your growth by a lot as compared to just picking a niche where you don't know anything. So if you simply like, there's many other factors to it. Like I always suggest, like when I picked a niche, I always just made sure it was validated and I knew it would work, because transparently, I had gotten it from someone like in a coaching program, and like they pretty much, I knew that it would work, the offer and the niche would work. But if you simply chose like a niche where you knew that there was budgets there that would fit the price point that you want to do, and you have a strength and some sort of like competitive advantage in that niche, you're already off to a really good start. And the other thing is like, if you're debating on which niche it is, like which niche to choose, like just choose. The important part is like just choosing, because I've seen people, beginner agency owners, that go months just picking like what their website should look like, what the name of their company should be, what the niche should be, what the pricing should be, right? Months, literally months, right? And so this is something that takes days, like a day, really, realistically, a day. In
Yeah.
Agency U, we're able to do that in a span of 1 hour with the things that we have in place. So really doesn't take long. It's really just like the two things I mentioned, and then the most important part, which is like choosing, deciding, right? Even the word decision means like cutting off all like decision, like cutting off all other options.
Mhm.
And that right there, that last part, super important, like committing, deciding. And that would be, I would feel like my advice to someone who is looking to pick a niche.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, what what I learned from Hormozy was like, okay, is it an industry that's easy to find people? Are they in a growing industry, and do they have money? So like that's the number like one thing which you hit on in all the points. And then I would tack on exactly what you said, which is, do you have some sort of expertise within that arena somehow? Like for me, I was in real estate for a while, so I had an upper hand of understanding the business, speaking the language, having a little bit of a network, and I could understand the pain points that I could solve for them. Maybe you have a connection to a business owner who's in the plumbing niche, and then you start talking to them, and then you understand that there's problems that you could solve with that. Cool, that's the niche that you're going to jump into because you have a third degree connection that you can help solve. And I think, yeah, a big mistake is people, yeah, like not making a decision on it. Like we had somebody um like delay the decision of picking a niche, and then they were like, okay, I'm just going to go really general with it, and they started marketing as general, and then they decided, and then after conversation they decided, okay, I'm going to go more specific with this one marketing piece that I'm going to get out. And all of a sudden they had leads coming in for that specific niche because they were talking to their ideal avatar. So I
Yeah.
think going too general and like doubting yourself and like trying to go general, like he had a bunch of like weird, like other like weird stuff like hitting him up, and it didn't make sense. But once you can start deciding, like have decision, and going all in on it, and making that decision, if they fit those three categories, and you might have a connection that of a pain point that you could solve, then I think that's what you go all in on. And don't worry about the sexiness side of it necessarily.
Yeah. Important point. Yeah. Important point you just said. Don't worry about the sexiness of it. Like, just think of this as your starting point. Like, especially if you are just beginning, and like the important part is just more so looking at like, hey, like we need to start producing revenue, we need to start producing results. Like, put passion aside for just a moment. I know this is something like Hermosi like talked about as well. Is like putting that aside first. You can always change and like pivot your business at any point. But the important part is like in the beginning, having the decisiveness, focus, and commitment. And you'll kind of notice like even throughout our conversation here, like there's some like key points, some patterns that you might notice, like decisiveness, focus, commitment. All of those are just as important as like the cold email scripts, the sales frameworks,
Totally.
the automations in the agency, right? Like those are, I would think, even more important, because without those, there is literally no agency.
Yeah, agreed. All right, last question. And if you guys are listening or watching, comment or message us with questions that would be helpful to answer. So I don't know how many questions we got through, but next question is, how do you decide what to delegate?
Yeah, I would say it's fully dependent on what stage you're at in your agency. like as a general framework, I think about it in two ways. Like I'm either delegating on the back end, which is systems like fulfillment, client management, operations, things like that, or I'm delegating on the front end, which is like appointment setting, sales, um, list building, inbox management, those kind of things. So you want to just think of it in terms of like leverage, like what at the stage where you're at. This applies to like if you're 0 to 10K a month, 10 to 20K, like 20 to 50, 50 to 100. What would be the role that would be the most leverage that if you hired this role, it would free up your time or make more make more revenue, or ideally it would save you time and make more revenue. So what would that be? Specifically for some people, like in the beginning, it maybe if it was like me, like it's just hiring on a virtual assistant to do some of like the manual the manual tasks that you're doing, right? The admin tasks, or just simply setting up, um, you know, uh, simply like sending out messages to potential prospects.
Yeah.
It could be anything as simple as that. So you just want to think about it in that way. Like what would be most leveraged? What would be the most leveraged task that I can substitute with a role right now that you're currently doing?
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. And I just went over this with somebody in a coaching call, one-to-one coaching call within Agency U, who's like feeling maybe a little bit overwhelmed, and he's trying to figure out, okay, how do I get all of this stuff off of my plate? So the exercise that I do to figure out what I need to delegate is I literally take out a whiteboard. I do the little T thing. In my left column, it says start, and in the right column, it says stop. So start, if I put my CEO hat on, if I see my high leverage activities, like what are all those high leverage activities that I need to start doing? And then we write that up. Okay, that's great. That's what we need to start doing more of that. Then on the next section, we have the stop. So anything that's not these high leverage activities that I could potentially delegate to somebody that is busy working, taking over my time, I'm going to put that in that column. Great. So we did that. We had a massive list on the stop, but what we saw was like, cool, this is a client success manager like role. Now, all we need to do is create a job description based off of your stop tasks and go find somebody to do this. And we have all of the stuff that you're stopping doing that somebody else is going to start doing for you. And then you can start doing the stuff that you're going to actually start doing. So the start stop list for delegating has been super helpful for us and me.
Yeah, that's a good framework. I've never heard of that before, but that's really systematic. I like that.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. If you guys have any questions, hit them down below wherever you're listening, or send me a DM and we can make sure we get them answered or help you out in some way, shape, or form. Anything else to add, Gilberto, before we wrap up?
I think that was pretty much it. Yeah, I think we hit a lot of points. I think just as a reminder for those listening, what we talked about in terms of like focus being the main thing, like in all our conversations, like that being like I think the recurring thing, like focusing on like one path, like one proven path that you can follow and committing to it, super important. So I think that's a good one to end off with.
Love it. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. If you would, or subscribe, like wherever you are listening to. And if you are an agency owner and you're looking to learn more about how myself and Gilberto can help you overcome some of these pain points, book a call with me and Gilberto down below, and you can learn more about Agency U. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.